The warship's medical bay was quiet. Only the sound of machines breathing air into the room. Outside, the galaxy was burning. But inside, one nurse stood alone. Her hands trembled as she held a tray of supplies. She was young, her skin a soft shade of silver blue, and her eyes were sharp with fear. The battle had ended hours ago. Wounded soldiers had been carried in and out, most never waking again. The nurse thought the room was empty, but then she saw one bed, hidden in the far corner. A shape lying still beneath a thick blanket. She froze, her heart beating faster. At first, she thought it was just another soldier who had not survived. The body was too still, too quiet. The blanket rose and fell, only a little. Almost invisible, she stepped closer, her breath catching. Something about the shape seemed wrong. The form was larger, broader than her kind. She whispered to herself, "Who is this?" But no answer came. The air felt heavy, as if the room itself wanted to warn her. Slowly, carefully, she pulled the blanket back just a little. What she saw made her heart race. The skin was pale, not silver blue like her people. The face was different, the jaw stronger, the hair dark against the pale skin. She stumbled back, eyes wide. Legends she had heard as a child filled her mind. Stories of a race that had vanished from this part of space. A race said to be dangerous, unyielding, impossible to kill, a human. She breathed, her voice no louder than a whisper. The word alone carried weight. Humans were supposed to be gone, wiped out long ago. Their stories lived only in warnings and tales meant to frighten children. Yet here, in front of her, under the blanket, was one of them. Her hands shook as she gripped the tray tighter. Should she call the others? Should she run? Her training told her to report immediately. But something in her heart stopped her. She stepped closer again. Drawn by fear, but also by a strange pull she could not explain. The human looked dead. His chest barely moved. His lips were pale, cracked. She leaned closer, listening for breath. For a moment, she thought there was nothing. Then suddenly, the blanket moved. The chest rose sharply, and the hand twitched beneath the covers. She gasped, almost dropping her tray. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body refused. She stood frozen, staring. The human was not dead. He was alive. The nurse's pulse raced. The room seemed smaller now, the air too thick. She whispered again, "Impossible." The human's eyelids fluttered but did not open. The movement was weak, but it was enough to send terror through her veins. What if he woke? What if he was dangerous? Her people had feared humans for generations. They were said to fight even. When broken, they were said to turn battles with only a handful of warriors. To face one human was to face death itself. But now, looking at him, she also saw something else. He was fragile. He was broken. He was alone. For a moment, she saw not a monster, but a patient. A living being who needed care. Her hand reached out before she could stop it. She touched the blanket, pressing it gently to calm her shaking fingers. The warmth beneath it surprised her. He was alive, truly alive. Her heart pulled in two directions, fear on one side, compassion on the other. If she cared for him, the others would condemn her. If she left him, he would die here, nameless, forgotten. Maybe it was safer that way. Maybe the galaxy was better off without humans, but something inside her whispered no. She stayed by the bed, her silver blue eyes fixed on his face. The war outside had taken everything from her family, friends, a home. Now Faith placed this human in her hands. Was it a curse, or was it something else? The machines hummed quietly. The lights flickered as the station's power wavered. She sat on the edge of the chair near his bed, still unable to look away. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a storm building. Every twitch of his hand was like thunder waiting to strike. She whispered again, though no one could hear. "Why are you here, human? Why did you survive?" The answer did not come. Only the sound of his weak breathing, yet she knew, deep in her heart, that this was not an accident. The galaxy had placed him here for a reason. The nurse leaned back, fear and suspense twisting inside her. She had stepped into the unknown, and she could not turn back. The still form on the bed was no longer just a patient. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. The nurse did not sleep that night. She sat near the strange bed, her silver blue eyes fixed on the human. The medical bay was dark except for the soft glow of the monitors. The machines whispered like distant winds, reminding her that the station was still alive, still holding together after the war. Every few minutes, she glanced at him. His chest rose and fell slowly. His breathing was uneven, but steady enough to keep her from calling the doctor. No one else dared to come near him. Everyone feared the stories, but she stayed. Her thoughts kept racing. Why him? Why here? Why? Now, the galaxy had fought for centuries, and the humans were only shadows in history. They were spoken of in warnings, always as destroyers, always as fighters. But here was one in front of her, helpless, pale, broken. Hours passed. She reached to change the bandages on his arm. Her hand trembled as she carefully unwrapped the old cloth. His skin was warmer now, a small sign of life. She replaced it with fresh bindings, whispering softly as though he could hear. "You should not exist, human, but you are here." She tried to convince herself that it was only duty. She was a nurse, and care was her task. But deep inside, she knew it was more. She felt the pull of something greater, like the edge of a storm she could not see but could feel in her bones. Then it happened. The blanket shifted again, but this time not faintly. The human's chest rose. Sharply, his head tilted slightly to the side, and his eyelids trembled. The nurse froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, his eyes opened, not fully, but just enough to reveal a glimpse of deep color. They were not like her people's eyes, which glowed faintly in the dark. His eyes were sharp, full of weight, heavy with a kind of fire she had never seen. She gasped and dropped the roll of bandages. It hit the floor with a dull sound. Her mind screamed to run, to call for help, to sound the alarm, but her body stayed rooted to the chair. The human's lips parted, no words yet, only a faint exhale that seemed like a sigh. His eyes flickered. Struggling to stay open, they locked on hers, and she felt her heart pound harder than ever before. It was not just a patient staring at her. It was something ancient, something powerful. For a long moment, time seemed frozen. The medical bay's hum faded. The war outside, forgotten. It was only her and him, locked in silence. She whispered, voice shaking, "You are awake." The human blinked slowly. His lips moved again, this time shaping sounds. His voice was dry, broken, but the meaning was clear. Water. The nurse's whole body trembled. He spoke. He was real. Not a dream, not a corpse. A human, alive. Asking for something as simple as water, she quickly reached for the flask on the table, poured a small measure into a metal cup, and pressed it to his lips. He drank slowly, each swallow sounding louder than the machines around them. She could not look away from his eyes as he drank. When he finished, he drew in a deep breath, his chest rising stronger this time, his voice rough, but steady enough to speak again. "You helped me." The nurse almost dropped the cup. He knew, he understood. His words were in her language. Not perfect, but clear. She shook her head slowly, whispering, "You should not know our tongue." The human coughed, his voice cracking but still firm. Long time. Listening, learning. Her heart raced. If he had been listening and learning, then what else did he know? How much of their world had he understood while lying there still? She leaned closer without realizing it. her curiosity stronger than her fear now. "Why are you here, human? Why are you alive?" His eyes flickered again. Closing for a second before opening, he whispered, "Fight. Lost, but not finished." His words chilled her. They were not only about him. They carried the weight of something larger, as if he spoke not just for himself, but for his entire kind. Her hands shook. She wanted to ask more, but she could see his strength. Fading again, he sank back into the bed, his breathing heavy, his eyes closed. But his words echoed in her mind. "Fight not finished." The nurse sat in silence, her body trembling from what she had witnessed. She had looked into the eyes of a human and heard him speak. She had felt the weight of his will. Even half-broken and deep inside, she knew one thing. This was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. The medical bay was no longer quiet. The nurse's whisper about the human had slipped beyond her lips to the ears of another, and soon it spread like fire through dry grass. Soldiers who could still walk came to the doorway. Staff lingered in corners, their voices hushed but urgent. "It is true. There is a human," one muttered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "No, impossible. They were wiped out." Another argued, but his trembling voice betrayed his fear. Then, "Explain the eyes that opened. Explain the words," a third snapped back. The nurse sat near the bed, trying to silence them. Her heart pounded. Every whisper felt like a knife cutting the fragile silence she was holding over the human's rest. She wanted to shield him from their fear, but she could not stop their words. The elders of the station were called. They were old enough to remember the stories, old enough to have seen records long buried. They entered with heavy steps. Their faces grim, one of them leaned over the bed, studying the human as if staring at a ghost. "It cannot be," the elder breathed, "and yet it is," the others murmured, recalling the tales told to them as children, tales of firestorms and broken empires. Tales of battles where humans fought until the last drop of blood, refusing to fall even when hope was gone. Legends say a single human could turn the tide. Of war, one elder whispered, "They say they never gave up, not even when crushed, not even when facing death itself." Another spat on the floor, his eyes full of anger. "And that is why they were hunted. That is why they were purged. They are too dangerous to exist." The nurse's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She looked at the human, weak and broken, his lips dry, his chest rising slowly. How could he be dangerous in this state? He was fragile, barely alive. Yet they spoke of him as if he were a weapon ready to explode. The crowd outside the room grew restless. Some shouted that he must be killed before he wakes again. Others argued he should be studied, his blood tested, his mind searched. And a few, very few, said he should be protected for knowledge, for hope. The nurse felt caught in the middle of storms she did not want. She remembered the look in his eyes when he whispered his words, "Fight not finished." It had shaken her. Not because it was a threat, but because it was a promise. Late in the night, when the others left, she sat beside him again. The silence returned, but the whispers still rang in her head. She leaned closer, whispering to him, though he slept. "They fear you, human. They fear what you were. But I do not. I see someone broken, someone alone." She touched his hand gently through the blanket. His skin was warmer now. She felt the faint pulse under her fingers. It was slow but steady. Her mind drifted back to the stories she had heard as a child. Her mother had once spoken of humans not only as warriors, but as builders, creators, dreamers. The galaxy had chosen to remember their rage and power. But perhaps it had forgotten their heart. The door opened quietly. Another nurse entered. Older, her face stern. She looked at the human with tight lips. Then at the young nurse, "You should not be here." The older woman said, "If they find out you have touched him, cared for him, They will call you traitor. I cannot leave him." The young nurse whispered back, "He is alive, and that is enough reason." The older nurse sighed, shaking her head. "You are a fool, but perhaps a brave one." Then she leaned closer, her voice low. "Do you know what they call his kind in the hidden records?" The young nurse shook her head, eyes wide. "The older nurse whispered, "Deathwalkers." The word chilled her. Deathwalkers. Beings who walked through fire and ruin, who turned war into legend. It was a name that carried fear across generations when the older nurse left. The young one sat in silence again, her heart torn. Deathwalker or not, he was here, and he was her patient as the hours stretched. She noticed something new, the humans. Lips moved in his sleep, faint sounds slipping out. Words in a tongue she did not know. They sounded rough, harsh, but also filled with weight. It was as if he was speaking to ghosts only he could see. She leaned closer, straining to catch a word. For a moment, she thought she heard her own language mixed within his dreams. A name perhaps, or a promise, she could not be sure. Her eyes filled with questions. Who was he? Where had he come from? Why had fate placed him in her care? The whispers in the halls grew louder with each passing hour. Some wanted to take him away, others to end him before he could rise. The storm of fear was building, and she knew she could not hold it back much longer. But as she looked at his face, pale yet strong, she felt something stir inside her, not fear, but courage, a thought she could not silence. Maybe the galaxy was wrong about humans. Maybe their story was not over. And as she sat beside him in the flickering light of the broken medical bay, she whispered words no one else dared to say. "I will protect you, human, no matter what they." Whisper, asterisk, the days that followed were filled with unease. The medical bay no longer felt like a place of healing. It felt like a chamber holding secrets too heavy to keep. Outside the door, whispers continued to rise. People argued about what should be done with the human. Some demanded his death, others demanded experiments, and a few, very few, whispered of keeping him safe. The young nurse ignored them all. Her duty had grown into something else. Each time she changed his bandages, each time she brought water to his lips, she felt the storm around her grow stronger. Yet she stayed by his side. She remembered the way his eyes had opened, sharp and alive even in weakness. The fire she saw there haunted her. His words broken but clear still echoed in her mind. Fight not finished. What fight had he meant? Was it his own, or was it something larger? On the third night, the station lights flickered as power drained. The nurse sat close to him, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. She whispered softly, "You must not give up, human, not yet." Then it happened. The human stirred. His head shifted against the pillow. His fingers twitched under the blanket. His lips moved again, this time not in dreams, but awake. The nurse leaned forward, her breath caught in her throat. She was not sure if she wanted to hear what he would say. Fear and curiosity battled inside her. His eyes opened slowly, heavy but sharp once more. He looked at her, and this time there was recognition. His lips parted, and in her own tongue he whispered a single word. "Why?" The nurse froze. Her heart raced. She swallowed hard and asked, "Why? What?" His voice was rough, broken, yet steady enough to shake her. "Why?" "Save me." She had no answer ready. She had told herself it was duty, that she was only following her role as a nurse. But now, under his gaze, that answer felt empty. She whispered back, "Because you are alive and no one deserves to be left to die." The human blinked slowly. His chest rose as he took a deeper breath. He whispered again, "Your people fear me." Her hands trembled. She glanced at the door where shadows of staff passed by. "Yes," she admitted, "they fear you. They fear what you were, what you might be again. His eyes narrowed. Not in anger, but in thought. His voice cracked as he asked, "And you? Do you fear?" The nurse felt her heart pound louder. She shook her head slowly. "I do not fear you." The human's gaze softened, just slightly. Then he coughed, his body shaking from the effort. She quickly reached to steady him, her hand pressed against his chest to keep him from rising. She felt the strength under his weakness, like a storm waiting behind broken walls. When his cough settled, he whispered something else. Words that made her blood run cold. "They will come." She frowned, leaning closer. "Who will come?" His voice lowered, heavy with weight. "The ones who ended us. The ones who hunt, they know I live." The nurse's breath caught. If what he said was true, then the danger was greater than anyone imagined. Keeping him alive was not just defying the whispers of her people, it might bring the hunters straight to their station. Still, she did not move away. She asked softly, "Then why stay alive? Why fight? If it only brings more danger?" His eyes burned, even half closed. His whisper was stronger now, because where there is life, there is hope. The nurse felt the words sink deep inside her. They were simple, yet powerful. Her heart trembled. She realized she was not speaking to a broken patient anymore. She was speaking to a warrior. Suddenly, the door slammed open. A group of officials entered, their faces stern, their eyes sharp with suspicion. One pointed at the human and barked. He spoke, did he not? What did he say? The nurse froze. Her mind raced. If she told the truth, they would kill him. If she lied, they might punish her. She glanced at the human. His eyes closed again, but she knew he was listening. She lifted her chin and whispered firmly. He said nothing. He only breathed. The officials stared at her for a long moment. One of them stepped closer, studying her face. Then, with a grunt, they turned and left, the door slamming shut behind them. The nurse's knees weakened. She sat back down, trembling. She looked at the human and whispered, "I lied for you. Why? I do not know." His lips curved, not into a smile, but something close. His voice was faint, but she heard it clear. "Because you believe." The nurse's eyes widened. She realized then that he understood her more than she had imagined. He knew her choice, her fear, and her courage. The silence returned, but it was no longer the same. It was heavier, deeper, filled with a bond that neither of them could explain. She leaned closer, whispering one last time before the lights dimmed into night. "Rest now, human, tomorrow." The whispers will grow louder, but so will I. And for the first time since the war ended, she felt a strange thing rising inside her. Not fear, not sorrow, but hope. The station floated in silence, drifting on the edge of ruined space. Outside, wreckage of ships still burned, glowing embers of a war that had not truly ended. Inside, the whispers of the human survival grew louder each day, spreading like cracks through steel. The nurse remained close to him, guarding his bed as if her presence alone could keep the storms away. She had lied for him, protected him. And now she felt the weight of that choice on her shoulders. The human strength was returning. Little by little, each day, his breathing grew steadier, his words clearer, but the galaxy had sharp ears. Danger did not wait. On the 6th day, alarms rang through the station. Red lights flashed across the metal corridors. The walls vibrated with the hum of shields activating. Soldiers rushed past the medical bay, their faces pale with fear. The nurse jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. "What is happening?" she whispered to herself. The door burst open. Another medic rushed in, her voice shaking. "Enemy patrol ships are closing in. They found us." The nurse froze. Her eyes darted to the human lying on the bed. His eyes were open, sharper than before. He was listening. His chest rose and fell with deeper rhythm, as if his body already knew what was coming. "They are coming," he whispered, his voice low but steady. The nurse's breath caught. He had warned her. He had said the hunters would come. Now it was happening. She felt the air grow heavy with dread. Soldiers ran past the doorway, the sound of boots echoing like thunder. Weapons were loaded. Shields hummed. The older nurse entered, her face pale. "You must leave him, child. He is not your duty anymore. We must protect ourselves, not him." But the young nurse shook her head. Standing firm beside the human's bed, "I will not leave him." The older nurse grabbed her arm, her voice sharp. "He is the reason they are here. Do you not understand? The hunters do not care for us. They came for him, the humans." Lips moved again, his voice weak, yet carrying a weight that silenced them both. "They fear what I am." The young nurse turned to him. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "Then let them fear. You will not die here." The station shook as explosions rattled the walls. The lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. The nurse nearly lost her balance. She heard the cries of soldiers in the halls, the clash of weapons in the distance. The human pushed against the bed. His arms trembled, but he rose slightly. His face twisted with effort. Sweat dripped from his brow. The nurse rushed to him. "You are not ready. You cannot stand." But his eyes burned, full of determination. "I must," he whispered. "They will not stop." His body was weak, yet the will inside him was stronger than the walls around them. He swung his legs over the side of the bed. His feet touched the cold floor. His hands gripped the edge of the bed, shaking but steadying himself. The nurse stepped closer, ready to stop him. But when she saw his eyes, she froze. They were not the eyes of a broken patient. They were the eyes of a warrior. The door shook with a blast. Smoke poured into the room. Shouts rang outside. "They are breaching the medical bay." The humans. Body tensed, his shoulders straightened despite the pain. He took one slow breath, steady and deep. Then he whispered to her, "Stay behind me." Her heart pounded. She wanted to argue, wanted to pull him back onto the bed, but her voice died. In her throat, she felt Itan aura, a presence that filled the room. He was not healed, but he was awake, and that was enough. The door cracked open with a screech. Enemy soldiers rushed in, their armor dark, their weapons glowing with energy. They looked at the nurses only for a moment, then their eyes locked. On the human, there one hissed. The last of them, the human, rose taller. Though his body shook with weakness, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You should have finished us when you had the chance." The nurse's breath caught. She felt the weight of those words. His voice carried no fear, no hesitation. It carried promise. The enemies raised their weapons, ready to fire. The nurse covered her face with her arms. But before the blasts could come, the human moved, even broken, even half-healed. His speed shocked them. He grabbed a metal stand beside the bed and swung it like a weapon. The first soldier fell with a crash. The others stumbled back, their eyes wide with disbelief. The nurse lowered her arms slowly, staring in awe. The legends were true, even at his weakest. The human fought with fire that no other being carried. The attackers shouted, regrouping, but the human stood taller, gripping the stand like a sword. His eyes burned with fury. His body shook with pain, yet he did not fall. The nurse whispered under her breath, "He is real. He is a deathwalker." The battle inside the medical bay had only just begun, but already the galaxy outside would never be the same. The medical bay shook with echoes of battle. The air was thick with smoke. Sparks flickered from shattered lights, and the hiss of energy weapons filled the corridor. The human stood at the center, his body weak, but his presence unshaken. The enemies hesitated. Their eyes darted to one another. They had been told that humans were gone. They had been told that the last of them had been purged long ago. Yet here stood one, pale, wounded. But burning with fire, the nurse stood frozen. In the corner, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would break through her chest. She had heard the stories, she had whispered the legends. But seeing it now was different. This was not myth. This was real. The first soldier stepped forward, his weapon raised. His voice shook as he snarled. "You should not exist." The human lifted the metal stand he had torn from beside the bed. His grip was steady despite the tremor in his arms. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of thunder. "And yet I do," the soldier fired. A beam of energy cut through the smoke. The nurse gasped and turned her face away, but when she looked again, the human was still standing. The shot had grazed his shoulder, leaving a burn, but he did not fall. His eyes blazed brighter. With a roar that shook the walls, he swung the metal stand. It struck the soldier's helmet with a crack that echoed through the bay. The enemy fell. Like stone, silence followed for a breath. Then chaos erupted. The others rushed forward. Their weapons fired in flashes of light. The human moved through them, not with grace, but with fury. Each strike of his weapon sent another to the ground. His body staggered, his wounds bled, yet he fought on. Every step he took felt like defiance itself. The nurse could not move. She could only watch. Her mind whispered that this was why they feared humans, because even broken, even half-dead, he was unstoppable. One of the attackers shouted, "Fall back! Fall back! He cannot be human. He cannot." His words were cut off by the sound of metal crushing against armor. The humans? Breathing grew heavy. His movement slowed, but still he stood. His face was pale with exhaustion. Yet his eyes blazed with the fire of 1,000 battles. The nurse's eyes filled with tears she did not understand. Fear and awe twisted inside her. She whispered softly, "You are a warrior. Even when the galaxy says you are finished." The human heard her. He turned his head slightly, his chest rising with effort. His lips moved, his words low. "I fight. So you may live." The nurse's breath caught. She had never heard words spoken with such weight. Not from her people, not from anyone. The remaining enemies backed away. Fear etched across their faces. They had come expecting an easy kill, but instead they had awakened a legend. Still, more shouts echoed in the halls. Reinforcements were coming, the station's alarms blared. The wall shook again as another blast struck the shields. The nurse ran forward, gripping his arm. "You cannot fight them all. You will die." The human steadied himself against the wall. Blood dripping from his side, his voice was harsh but steady. "If I fall, I fall fighting." The nurse shook her head, her silver blue eyes fierce. "No, not alone. If you fight, then I will stand too." He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. His voice lowered. Then, "You are braver than many who call themselves soldiers." The door shook again. Smoke filled the air. More enemies pushed through, their weapons raised. The human lifted his makeshift weapon once more. His body sagged with exhaustion, but his spirit roared like fire. The battle resumed. The room became a storm of light and shadow. The nurse ducked behind overturned tables, throwing supplies to distract the attackers. Her heart pounded with every flash, but her eyes never left the human. He was not perfect in his strikes. He stumbled. His wounds slowed him, but every blow he delivered carried the strength of something greater than flesh. It carried will, raw and unbroken. The enemies fell one by one. Some screamed, some fled. The survivors dragged each other back, retreating. Into the smoke, their voices carried fear. It is true. The humans still live. The Deathwalker still breathes. When the last of them vanished into the corridors, silence fell heavy. The human staggered. His knees buckling, he leaned against the wall, his chest heaving with sharp breaths. The nurse rushed to his side, catching his arm before he collapsed. "You cannot push more. You will kill yourself," she whispered. He looked down at her, his eyes tired but burning. His voice came rough but clear. "Better to die standing than live kneeling." Her eyes blurred with tears. She shook her head fiercely. "Not while I am here. Not while I can still keep you alive." The human's gaze softened just enough. His lips curved faintly, almost a smile. He whispered, "Then, perhaps, I will fight another day." She lowered him back onto the bed, her hands steady, though her heart shook. Around them, the medical bay lay in ruins. Broken walls, scorched floors, fallen enemies, and yet the human lived. The nurse sat beside him, staring at the destruction. She whispered softly to herself, "Now I understand why the galaxy feared you, human, and now I understand why I must protect you." The human closed his eyes, his breathing slowing again. But his voice lingered, quiet, strong. "Hope is not dead. Not yet." And in that moment, she knew the warrior within him was awake. And nothing in the galaxy could put it back to sleep. Asterisk. The medical bay was quiet again, but it was not the same silence as before. It was a silence heavy with smoke, broken walls, and the smell of burned steel. The nurse sat beside the human, her hands stained from patching his wounds. Her body was tired, her spirit shaken, but her eyes never left him. He slept, his chest rising slowly, his face pale yet strong. His hands still bruised from gripping the metal stand that had served as his weapon. Around him lay the remains of enemies who had dared to breach the station. They had fled, but they would return. She knew it, he knew it. The door opened quietly. The elder who had doubted him the most entered. His eyes scanned the wreckage, then fell on the human for a long time. He said nothing. Then, with a voice heavy with fear and awe, he whispered, "The legends are true." The nurse lifted her head, her silver blue eyes sharp. "He is not a legend. He is alive. He is flesh. He is hope." The elder frowned. "Hope or a curse, you cannot know which he will bring." The nurse's voice grew firm. "I know enough. He saved us when no one else could. You fear him because of stories. I do not fear. I see a warrior. I see someone who refuses to fall." The elder's lips pressed tight. He turned and left. But she knew his words would spread. The whispers outside would grow louder. Not of death, but of survival. Hours passed. The nurse kept her vigil when the human stirred again. His eyes opened, weary but burning. She leaned closer, whispering, softly, "Rest, you are safe." He blinked slowly, his lips parted, and his voice came rough but steady, "Safe." For now, her heart clenched. She wanted to deny it, but she could not. The galaxy was still burning. The enemies would come again. They would never stop hunting him. "Why do they want you so badly?" she asked. Her voice trembling, his gaze turned distant. His words came like stones, heavy and sharp. "Because we never bowed. Because we fought until the last. They fear what they cannot break." The nurse lowered her eyes. She thought of the destruction in the medical bay, of the way even half-broken he had stood against enemies who outnumbered him. She understood now. The galaxy did not fear human weapons. It feared the human spirit. But she also saw something more, something the whispers never told. She saw the way he shielded her, the way he fought not only for himself, but for others. His strength was not born from rage alone. It was born from hope. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Fighting, surviving, carrying this burden." His eyes turned to her, his voice low but steady. "No. Because where there is life, there is tomorrow, and tomorrow is worth fighting for. Her heart trembled at his words, simple yet filled with power. She reached out, placing her hand over his. His skin was warm, his pulse steady. She whispered, "Then I will fight for tomorrow too." He looked at her for a long moment. His lips curved faintly, almost a smile. Then he closed his eyes again, breathing deep. The nurse leaned back in her chair, staring at the flickering lights above. She knew the days ahead would not be easy. The station was weak, the galaxy was cruel, and enemies would not rest. But she also knew something else. The human was alive, and that changed everything. Soon, footsteps echoed outside the bay. Soldiers and civilians gathered. They wanted to see him, to confirm the whispers. Their voices were a mix of fear and wonder. Is it true? Is he really human? I saw him fight. He stood against 10 at once. If one still lives, maybe others do too. The nurse stepped into the doorway, her voice firm. Yes, he is human, and yes, he lives. But he is not our enemy. He is our hope. The crowd murmured. Some nodded, some frowned, but none could deny the truth. The wreckage in the medical bay was proof enough. Inside, the human stirred once more. His voice carried out the door, low but strong. Hope is not dead. The words spread through the hall like fire, repeating from one mouth to another, until even the most fearful whispered them. Hope is not dead. The nurse returned to his side. Her eyes softened. She whispered to him, "You have given them something they lost long ago. They will not forget." He opened his eyes again, his gaze locked on hers, his voice quiet but filled with promise. "Neither will you," and she knew he was right. From the moment she pulled back the blanket and saw him stir, her life had changed. What began as a simple act of care had become the spark of something far greater. The station was broken, the galaxy still burned, but tomorrow no longer felt empty. Tomorrow carried the promise of a human who refused to die, and of a nurse who refused to leave him. Together, they were not just survivors, they were the beginning of a legend.